delegates this year. And so if you see me walking around your neighborhood, please don't call the phone around. And I said, how many of you have student loans right now? Pretty much everyone's hand went up. How many of you are working second jobs right now? Pretty much everyone's hand went up. And how many of you thought of quitting? And a lot of hands went up. And that's sort of emblematic of the problem that we're having in Virginia, retaining really skilled teachers in the Commonwealth. So we've got to address that. Another issue I'd say is healthcare comes up a ton at the doors. This district overall is a lot of working class families. We've got a lot of seniors that are living on a fixed income. So I hear a lot about the need to make prescription drug prices more affordable. There are things that the state can do that it's not currently doing that would help with that. I think we also need to make sure that some of the health insurance plans that we offer through the exchange are not really junk plans, that they actually offer insurance and don't leave you out to dry when you go to use it. That's a really important sort of pocketbook issue for people. And then I guess just the last issue I'd highlight is the economy. And I'm always trying to think about new ways that we can bring an economic spark to this region. We're obviously very lucky to have the largest naval base right around the corner. We're lucky to have proximity to the second largest port system on the entire East Coast. But when I talk to business leaders, particularly in the clean energy space, they say Virginia needs more and better policy on this issue. And in some ways, this region is uniquely positioned to lead in renewable energy development and deployment. We do have the ports. We're sort of perfectly situated in some respects for offshore wind as well, which can help with supply chain. And we have the technical know-how already because of shipbuilders and people who are used to building stuff. But if you talk to those business leaders, what they'll say is we need policy, we need certainty, we need to know that there's going to be demand for these sources of energy if we build them and invest in them. And right now those jobs are going to a lot of other places that do have policy, whether that's Maryland or North Carolina or New York, New Jersey. I think we should claim the benefits of that new industry. So those are just a couple issues that have come up, but you'll see me knocking on doors, as I said at the beginning, trying to listen to you. And I asked for your vote on November 5th of this year, so it's coming up fast. We're only about 90 days out from the election. And also happy to take any questions that you might have.
Oh, Pam.
Hi, Pam.
There's a number of pieces of legislation that a lot of the freshman Democrats put in for this last session. And the three big ones that come to my mind is felons voting for president and 16-year-olds being able to vote. And there's some talk about clean energy legislation. There's some legislation here, I think, that will turn us into California. And that's not a great place. Got any comments on that?
Yeah, in terms of voting, right, it's a constitutional right to vote. I think, for me, I think if someone has gone through the criminal justice system and has paid their debt to society, and they come out and they're a returning citizen, I think they have a right to get a job again and to get housing again and to vote again. I think that's their right. Yeah, and then on the clean energy piece, not sure exactly, if I'm being honest, what you mean by making it like California, but I'm just, in terms of the business leaders that I've been talking to, they really want Virginia to have a policy on this because, the other thing too is the Department of Defense has a goal. They're addressing it, they're making investments, they're trying to address things like sea level rise. You talk to leadership at the ports, they're doing the same thing. The only entity really that doesn't have a coordinated regional policy is the Commonwealth. And that means not only that we are less prepared to deal with these issues, but also less able to seize on the economic opportunity that it provides for everyone in this community. So just based on what I'm hearing from people who are in the industry, I think it could benefit this region a lot.
What about right to work?
Yeah, so I think one of the issues in Virginia is we're consistently ranked near the top of the list in terms of places to do business, which I think is great. I also think, though, we have to increase our standing when it comes to places to actually be a working class family, because we're usually near the bottom of the list for that. So good for business, but bad for workers. I think that we can level that playing field a little bit.
Well, isn't it true if the Democrats take control of the House and the Senate that Virginia loses the right to work?
I can't
about
predict.
5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, in about 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
All I
think
can
that's a huge that's a huge issue for conservatives. And you're in a very conservative part of the city right now. We're in Ward 5, it's the most conservative part. And we have concerns about how much money that you want to spend of ours.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think a lot of those things I said actually didn't cost a lot of money. A lot of those things are actually aimed at promoting economic growth with expanding the tax
What
base.
about the new Green Deal? I know it's not a state issue, but it kind of speaks to the same thing, clean energy. I was in.
It was proposed, okay, we have LIS system, you can see it online. There was a bill proposed, and it wasn't detailed, but it was along the same lines as the federal. So, I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah.
Can't see it.
Well, listen, I mean, if you just look at the Department of Labor statistics right now, if you go to the website, wind energy, solar energy are the fastest growing jobs in America. You talk to a lot of these business leaders that say Virginia is right for a lot of these technologies to take root. I think we should take advantage of that. I mean, those are jobs that can be outsourced. I don't know why we wouldn't lean into that.
I'm all for green energy, but I'm also against political pandering when you say something that's not true, like Cortez does. She is so far left of reality with the green energy deal that I think we need to be very cautious about where our dollars are spent.
Yeah.
I'm all for green energy. I was in a hydrogen development business.
Oh, that's amazing.
Before it was a road
Yeah.
legislation. I was very
That's
active.
incredible. Yeah, and in the 4 years that I worked in the federal government working on clean energy policy, I worked with Democrats and Republicans to promote renewable sources. Granted, members of Congress, the Republicans, weren't particularly useful, but you talk to the governors, the Republican governors, they got it. Because they could see in their states, wind energy, solar energy, geothermal energy, energy efficiency upgrades. I mean, shouldn't really be a partisan issue. I think it's been my experience that, particularly around wind, I've done probably the most work around a production tax credit to help promote that industry. And Republican governors used to line up for that. That was a true bipartisan effort, and I think to the extent that we can find areas to work together in spaces like that, that's a beneficial thing for the Commonwealth, for workers, for just creating more sustainable sources of energy here in Virginia. I'm all for that.
Oh, I got two of them. One
Sure.
is, you're talking about schools.
Yeah.
Now, you need to go back and take the lottery funds out of the general funds.
Mhm.
Take that out. And I'd like to see a term limit.
Mhm.
I mean, you probably ain't gonna like that, but I'd like to see a term limit on, because I'm
Yeah.
tired of seeing career politicians.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I hear a lot of frustration also about gerrymandering, that politicians getting to pick their voters, frustration about a lot of money in politics. I mean, all of these things work together, right, to erode trust in government, which I think we can work to remedy, or at least we should. On the education piece, couldn't agree with you more. We haven't been funding education intelligently, I don't think. After 2010, after the economic recession, we stopped, as a matter of state policy at least, having a dedicated funding stream for school infrastructure, school construction. The result is that local governments, whether it's Norfolk or, in this district, Northampton County or Accomack County, they had to fund repairs, they had to fund new construction, and of course, if you're a local government, that's an enormous strain on your budget just because the state has abdicated its leadership. And of course, when you're in an economic recession, the realities are a little bit different than what we're in today. Today, the budget is in a much different place. So I think you're right. And I'll just also say this last piece in terms of sort of fairness of education funding. One of the things that's true in Virginia that is not the case in a lot of other places across the country is that we send the least amount of public school dollars into areas with the highest amount of poverty. We send the most amount of money to the areas in Virginia that have the most wealth. And that kind of perpetuates inequities in education. It impacts outcomes. And I'm thinking about this district, like I said at the beginning, that has a lot of working class families on the shore. It has areas of deep generational poverty. That perpetuates that. When you talk to teachers who are working in buildings that are literally falling apart, I think our kids deserve better than that. I went to public school myself. I'm a product of public schools. I don't want to be the exception as someone who, had opportunities as a result of that education. That's the number one thing you have to get right for this community.
Speaking of money and education, did you go to school anywhere else besides Virginia?
So I went to school here. I went to William and Mary, and then I also went to UC Berkeley in California.
And what you studied first?
I got my law degree there, in part because they have a lot of places you can study law, and a lot of places where you can be sort of miserable doing it. I went there because they have a real interest on public interest work. They really, they're not so interested in sending into big fancy law firms. They really want you to try and use your law degree to help shape policy, to try and figure out really complicated issues of public policy, and try and lift people up. And that kind of mission, I think just in part because of the way that I was raised, really resonated with me. So I was thankful to have that experience.
I see you've raised quite a bit of money, like our last report, 191,000. How much is that local, and how much is that from out of state?
Yeah, the vast majority of money that we have raised has come from Virginia. We've raised more money than my opponent from Virginia. We've raised more money than my opponent from people living in HD 100. And unlike my opponent, my average donation is less than $100. And that actually is the piece that I'm most proud of, because that's an indicator of grassroots support. We haven't had like massive corporations coming and dumping money in. I would much rather have people donating to my campaign, which has been the case since I started in February. But thank you for the question. It's a good one. All right, no more questions? I don't bite. And thank you for those questions.
What is your, if you're elected, what's your number one policy?
Education, we have to get that right, absolutely. Another thing I didn't mention, but that's important to me, is getting an emphasis on trades in the schools. One of the things that has resulted from our lack of investment in public education is that we've taken out some of those programs. So if if you can envision a career as an electrician or a carpenter, those are really, really good jobs. And we need people to do those jobs. That's true here in Norfolk. That's true on the Eastern Shore. I talk to people all the time. They're like, I wish I could just find a really good electrician. I think part of the remedy for that is sparking interest in the trades, getting people in those sort of skill sets, if you will, at an earlier age.
Well, that's the problem. Is at the vocational center on Military Highway,
Yeah.
they did away with a lot of hands-on type
Yeah.
training
Yeah.
and put everybody in a chair behind a computer.
Yeah.
And that's not everybody's forte.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree completely. And not everyone needs to go to college. And I think sometimes we put an overemphasis on that. And so then you end up with people who have gone through, have a college degree, but also are carrying a mountain of student debt, whereas maybe they could have become an apprentice and earned money as they learn skills and get credentials, and then have a marketable career anywhere they go in the country, not just here in the Commonwealth if they end up moving around. I think for a lot of people, that's a better, more attractive option. So thank you for asking that.
I mean, I don't know if you see that program, This Old House on TV.
I've seen this.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
they just started, I guess, a year or so ago.
Yeah.
They're bringing people out of schools that don't want to go to college, and they're putting them to work with this guys here. At least they're learning a trade, electricians,
Yeah.
plumbers, whatever.
Definitely.
And that's the thing is, like I say, not everybody wants to go sit behind a desk and in front of a computer all day.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely not for everyone. Like I said, then you end up with student debt. And actually, my work as a civil rights attorney with a nonprofit, one of the things I used to do is help people who have interacted with the criminal justice system in some shape or form when they're coming out and looking for jobs, working with apprenticeship programs to get them into programs like that so they can be getting skills. It's a good way for them to land on their feet, and I think it works well for everyone too.